Perspectives on the role of family. We talk about different sociological perspectives about the roles that a family has to perform. To start off with, we'd talk about this structuralist perspective, functionalism. To remind you all once again, functionalism is a structuralist perspective, and structuralists believe it's the structures of society that shape human behavior, right? And when we talk about functionalism, functionalists, because they're structuralists, even they believe that the structures of society, and in this case the family, plays in this case the family plays a very strong role for the society. And because we're talking about functionalism in specific, this role of a family is actually beneficial towards the individual and towards the society. Get it? We'd start off with
Yes,
the account of how the family benefits its members and society. What sort of role does a family play towards the benefit of its members, that is, individual family members, and the society as a whole, and how the functions of family have changed, if they have? And when we talk about the change in terms of the function of family, does this also have to do with the loss of functions debate? Because there are certain sociological commentators who claim that there's been a loss of functions, or in other words, there are certain sociological commentators who claim that the functions that a family used to perform once, the family does not perform them anymore. Do we get this?
Yes, sir.
All right. To start off with, I'd like to start off with Mr. George Peter Murdoch. George Peter Murdoch was actually a social anthropologist. अब anthropologists कौन होते हैं? वो लोग जो human society को study कर रहे होते हैं. Or to put it in a simplistic manner, I don't know if anyone has ever seen, on this Discovery Channel and the National Geographic Channel, you see these people who are usually wearing a safari suit, and they go on living with the oddest of tribes and the most unusual places. Do you all get what I'm
Yes,
saying?
sir.
Yeah.
yes,
Yes.
sir.
They're usually social anthropologists, right? Anthropology is the study of human society, and with I mean, this does have its links with the with it does have its links with comparison of the societies today as compared to how societies were back in the past, right? So अब हम बात करें about Mr. George Peter Murdoch. Murdoch is also referred to as a functionalist. Murdoch, what he did was he conducted his study, or rather he analyzed data on 250 different societies, ranging from a simple society to a highly complex society. We're talking about this gentleman, Mr. George Peter Murdoch. I'd want everyone to keep the name Murdoch in mind. Murdoch conducted a detailed analysis on 250 different societies, ranging from a simple society like a tribal society to a very complex society as well. And according to Murdoch, what he did was he actually came up with the definition of family. Murdoch came up with the definition of family, and at the same time, there were certain features that Murdoch claimed were universal, and every family across the globe, according to Murdoch, again based on his sample, did hold these universal features. So there are two things that I'm talking about over here. Number one, according to Murdoch, who came up with the definition of family, we would be discussing his definition of family over here in the next few minutes. And number two, he claimed about the universality of family. He claimed that there are certain features, certain characteristics that are to be found in almost every society, in almost every family, in every society. Let's make it like that, right? Now, Murdoch had written a book in 1949. The name of his book was The Social Structure. And the reason why I am referring to, or the reason why I'm mentioning this year over year, is because I want you all to have an idea about I mean, to put it into context, we're talking about something that Murdoch came up with in 1949, right? 59, 69, 79, 89, 99, 2009, 2019, and two more. We're talking about good about 72 years now, right? So, having a look at the definition of family that Murdoch came up with, according to George Peter Murdoch, when you talk about a family comprises of common residence. Number two, according to him, a family comprises of economic cooperation and reproduction. Number three, according to him, a family comprises of adults of both sexes. Number four, according to Murdoch, a family should have one or more children owned or adopted. Now, I'd leave you all for a minute. I'd want everyone to read through this, absorb this first, and then I'd like to discuss this. Gentlemen, Murdoch is claiming about a family having common residence. The question that rises over here is, I mean, why is it? Just think of it. There are so many people that I know. If I talk about my siblings, if I talk about my family, I have my siblings who do not share their accommodation with me, and if they're not simply sharing their accommodation with me, would I simply refer to them as someone who's not a part of my family? I don't think that makes a lot of sense to me, at least. Get it?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
One, we're trying to scrutinize this point, right? A family comprising of common residents living in the same home. तो ठीक है, मर्डॉक साहब ने कह दिया, लेकिन किस हद तक ये applicable है या नहीं है, that's questionable. One. Number two, we'd speak about economic cooperation. And when we speak about economic cooperation and reproduction, oh yes, in many cases, and in rather say majority cases, you do have some of the other sort of economic cooperation from members of your family. This is something that is very common, but just because you do not have economic cooperation from your family, that doesn't at all mean you'd start referring to the people whom you thought were your family as not a part of your family. It doesn't make sense, right? अगर आपको economic cooperation family से नहीं मिल रही, तो क्या आप family को family कहना छोड़ दोगे, right? And so is the case with reproduction. The third point actually, according to Murdoch, in a family, adults should be of both sexes. Okay, that works well for us, that works well for people in our part of the world, in South Asian countries, but nonetheless, do you realize Mr. Murdoch is not leaving any room for homosexuality or homosexual couples or civil partnership over here, right? This might have worked out back in 1949, in around say 70 years back, but the extent to which this particular point would have acceptance today, especially in the Western world, is highly questionable, right?
Yes, sir.
The fourth point, according to Murdoch, a family is a family when you have children, either owned or adopted. You come across so many people who married, as we call it, and they still do not have children. For him to be a family, to be called a family, or to refer to someone as a family, they ought to have children. So the question is, how is that even making sense, or how is that even to be accepted today? Do we all get this?
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Nonetheless, we shouldn't forget, or we shouldn't what do you call it, just because we have discussed a couple of points that don't really go in line with how Mr. Murdoch defined what a family is and it should be like, doesn't at all mean कि Murdoch की definition को हम totally sideline कर देंगे. Murdoch की definition को हम अभी भी पढ़ रहे हैं और आगे भी हम use करते हुए चलेंगे, right? But we all need to keep in mind what we just discussed. This is another thing that I'd like to bring into your attention over here. You know what? This definition of family that Murdoch came up with, how about we refer to this as an exclusive definition? I'm referring to this as an exclusive definition. I'm using the word exclusive over here because, this is a very exclusive approach. There are certain characteristics that Murdoch has come up with, and according to him, Bhaijan, if you fit into this criteria, okay, fine, we'd consider you as a family. If you do not fit into this criteria, we wouldn't call you a family. तो अगर मैं वर्ड यूज़ करता हूँ एक्सक्लूसिव अप्रोच, या अगर मैं मर्डॉक की डेफिनेशन को एक एक्सक्लूसिव डेफिनेशन कहता हूँ, तो मेरे ख्याल से मुझे यहाँ पे कोई गलत नहीं कहना चाहिए. डू वी ऑल गेट दिस?
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
Yes, sir.
Right. Now, taking this a step further, the functionalist definition is also referred to as an exclusive definition because it is based on the idea that families have characteristics that make them different from other social groups such as schools, etc. Right. This definition is flexible enough to accommodate different type of family relationship and organizations. For example, families do not have to be necessarily monogamous. I'm assuming everyone sitting over here knows what monogamy is or a monogamous marriage is. When you talk about monogamy or monogamous marriage, we are referring to a relationship where the husband and wife stay married throughout their life, right? Or in other words, when you have a single partner, when you're living with a single partner throughout your life, right? Now, when we know what monogamy is, we need to know about what polygamy is as well. And if we talk about the comparison between monogamy and polygamy, polygamy is when you can have, or rather when you do have more than one पार्टनर्स एट अ टाइम, ठीक है जी. एंड ऑफ कोर्स इनकी अगर हम बात करते हैं तो देर आर सर्टन वेरिएशंस देयर एज वेल. तो मोनोगमी जैसे, लाइक आई सेड, मोनोगमी इज वन partner throughout your life. इसी तरीके से if I talk about serial monogamy is when an individual has one partner at a time but can have several partners throughout their life. The best way to understand this is to consider our Prime Minister's example, and Imran Khan Sahab. His pattern of marriages can be referred to as serial monogamy because he chooses to have one partner at a time, but at the same time he has had multiple partners, multiple married partners throughout his life. Likewise, when I talk about polygamy, like I said, is when you have more than one partners at a time, right? You know what? This polygamy or a polygamous marriage, you could again subcategorize this, or you could put this into two categories and divide them into polygyny and polyandry, where polygyny is when one man has more than one wife, right? Polygyny is how things are like in Pakistan as well, or many other Islamic countries, especially the Middle Eastern countries, right? We refer to that as polygyny, where one man is married to multiple women. And then once we know what polygyny is, we need to know what polyandry is as well. And when we talk about polyandry, so we're talking about one woman being married to many men, which is not very common, although nonetheless there are places on this planet where this does happen. For instance, in Tibet, right? So, I hope everyone understands this bit.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Murdoch's definition distinguishes between family and non-family groups, right? However, I mean, like, if you remember the four different characteristics that we spoke about, for him, a family to be called a family, you need to meet this criteria, and that is why, for the third time, like I say, we are referring to it as an exclusive approach, right? However, it excludes many possible living arrangements, such as a single parent family. There's a possibility, right? Such as a homosexual household that are considered to be families in many modern industrial societies. Like I said, if we try scrutinizing this definition of family that was put forward by Mr. George Peter Murdoch, there are so many living arrangements, so many social arrangements that do not really fit into the criteria that Mr. Murdoch came up with, right? Now, remember Murdoch, the year was 1949. The name of the book was The Social Structure. Whereas on the other hand, if we talk about Mr. Anthony Giddens in 2006 came up with an alternative definition of family. And जहाँ पे हम लोग मर्डॉक की definition को एक exclusive definition claim कर रहे हैं, वहीं पे हम लोग Giddens' definition, Anthony Giddens' definition, we refer to it as an inclusive definition, right? Now, exclusive definition, you have a criteria. If someone fits in, they fit in. If they do not fit in, they are excluded from how Mr. Murdoch defined a family would be like, right? And in contrary, if we talk about Mr. Anthony Giddens, if we talk about Giddens, his definition of family is referred to as an inclusive definition. It's more like, okay, you're a part of my family, so are you, so are you, so are you, so are you. Do we get this?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Giddens in 2006 has suggested an alternative, that is an inclusive definition that focuses on kinship or blood relationships and the general relationship that make families different from other social groups. Now, why is it that we are referring to Giddens' definition as an inclusive definition? Because he is referring to kinship, and I'm assuming everyone sitting over here knows what kinship is, your relatives, your wider kin, राइट तो जब हम बात करते हैं अबाउट किनशिप बॉन्ड्स या ब्लड रिलेशनशिप्स, आपको पता है नाउ आर वेरी ओन देसी टिपिकल फैमिलीज, वी and the way we are related to people, like there are people, I mean there are kids who taken off from college and they'll be like, sir मेरी चाचा की पुप्पी की खाला की मामी की बेटे की मेहंदी थी. I mean, it would take you a while to figure out what relationship is the child actually referring to, but nonetheless we do refer to them as our relatives, right?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Them being a part of a family. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Now, moving on. According to Giddens, families are defined through people that are directly linked by kin connections, where adult members take responsibility for childcare. One advantage of an inclusive definition like this is that it covers a variety of possible family forms and relationship. There is a problem if the definition is too broad. Of course, this is a very broad definition. I mean, anyone could actually end up being your family member, right? There's a problem if the definition is too broad. It may include groups that most people would not normally consider to be families, right? Most people, of course, we're talking about different social groups. There are some parts of the world where there's more acceptance towards particular family forms as compared to the rest. Do we get this?
Yes, sir.
Yes. Yes, sir.
Murdoch further argues that it is the nuclear family that is the universal social unit, right? Remember, we'd spoken about, I'd use the word universal. I mean, not me, Murdoch did, right? Remember, we had spoken about how Murdoch claims about the universality of a family. Murdoch further argues that it is the nuclear family that is the universal social unit. Nuclear families consist of parents and their children. That makes it two generations now. You know, all of this we have discussed. If you remember, I mean, in the last class we spoke about the different types of families, so I'd not really get into a lot of details when it comes to these different family forms, right? I'd try to give you a quick little recap on this, but we've already invested a lot of time on these, right? So, nuclear families consist of parents and their children, two generations. In the past and in traditional societies, other relatives may also be present. But Murdoch argues that the nuclear family is at the heart of extended families. Why is it that we talk about the nuclear family being at the heart of extended families? Let me put it in a simplistic manner. Let me try doing that. Do you know what? When you talk about a nuclear family, we all know what a nuclear family is. To put it in a simple manner, nuclear family is a family that comprises of a husband, a wife, and few children living together, right? And when we speak about an extended family is a family that comprises of family members that are beyond our nuclear family, right? That comprises of family members that are beyond our nuclear family. Now, when we talk about family members beyond our nuclear family, you know, would I be wrong if I say an extended family is actually a lot of nuclear families being put together? Let me say that again. An extended family is usually a lot of nuclear families being put together. To rephrase this, you know, your family is a nuclear family, and then your chacha's family is a nuclear family apne liye, your puppa's family is a nuclear family apne liye, your khalu's family is a nuclear family unke liye, your mamu's family is a nuclear family unke liye, right? Now, all of these nuclear families, if they collectively put together, doesn't that make it an extended family?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
It does.
Now, according to Murdoch, Murdoch argues that the nuclear families are, or the nuclear family is at the heart of extended families. In modern industrial societies, contact with the wider kin, such as grandparents, tends to be infrequent and remote, rather than meeting regularly in person. And the nuclear family is a self contained economic unit whose members are expected to support each other socially and psychologically. I'd want everyone to spend a minute reading through this. We're talking about a nuclear family being a self contained economic unit, right? We're talking about a nuclear family being referred to as a self contained economic unit whose members are expected to support each other socially and psychologically both, right? All right, I'll give you all a minute, read through this. I'll give you all a minute. I want everyone to read through this and then we discuss this. Let's discuss this part. Self-contained economic unit. Why is it that we're referring to a nuclear family as a self-contained economic unit? Now, do you know what, if you talk about families after industrialization, right, after industrialization, families have been self-contained economically, right? Because you know what, when you talk about a nuclear family, पहले हम economic part को यहाँ पे discuss कर रहे हैं, then we move on towards the social and psychological bit. Now if we talk about the economic bit over here, we do know, or we all should keep in mind, कि जब हम बात करते हैं about a nuclear family के अंदर generally the expectation is that, I mean, if we talk about, okay, let's talk in terms of how the functionists see it, because the functionists see as a man being the breadwinner, right? If the man is the breadwinner, if the man is bringing back money home, he's actually bringing back money home for himself, his wife, and his children, right? So, when you talk about a self contained economic unit, in other words, the economic liabilities, the money matters, they are there, that are restricted, or the liability over here is pretty defined in terms of those few family members only. One. Number two, to understand this in a better manner, let's do one thing. Let's compare this with a family. Yeah, if we take this a step further, we're on page number 83, and according to Murdoch, according to George Peter Murdoch, there are four functional prerequisites of the family. Now, what does the word prerequisite mean? A pre-requirement, or in other words, something that is essentially supposed to be there. According to Murdoch, there are four functional prerequisites, or in other words, to put it in a simplistic manner, there are four very important functions that a family plays for individuals and the wider society. To start off with, number one, sexual control, because a family defines with whom you could have a sexual relationship. One. Number two, reproduction. If it wasn't have been for family, the society would have eventually ceased to exist, because reproduction takes place within a family usually. Number three, socialization. Family is an institution that equips children, or that teaches children to be a part of the society, that helps children adapt to the norms, the values, the culture, the traditions, the customs, so on and so forth, so that they could become active and acceptable members of a particular society. And the fourth function of a family, according to Murdoch, again, is economic provision, or in other words, it is your family that works towards supporting your economic needs, right? For the members of a family that aren't really I mean, I mean, there are family members that are dependent. For instance, the age group that you guys are going through in this age and phase, you need some or the other support by your family members, by your family, right? Likewise, when you grow older, the sick, the elderly, they are taken care of, they're supported financially by family members. We get this, right?
Yes, sir.
Right.
Yes, sir.
Now, these were the four different functional prerequisites Murdoch claimed a family does play. Number one, sexual control. Number two, reproduction. Number three, socialization. And the fourth one is economic provision. I hope we're all sorted there.
Yes, sir.
If we take this a step further, according to Parsons and Bales in 1956, they argued that whereas in the past a family was expected to be multifunctional, that is performing different functions. It has been increasingly specialized in modern industrial societies. The development of new social institutions such as education system meant that the family gradually suffered a loss of functions. And someone had spoken about loss of functions earlier. This is what we're talking about. But to put this into context, let me explain this to you. Now, see, you know what? There was a time when the family used to perform a lot of functions, from taking care of your education to your health to your safety and security to your welfare. But slowly and gradually, family has, I mean, these roles that were once performed by the family, slowly and gradually, what has happened is these roles that were once performed by the family have been taken over by more specialized institutions, right? And this gentleman, Mr. Parsons, he refers to this as institutional differentiation. I don't think it's written over here in your book. Parsons referred to this as institutional differentiation. The idea over here is that the functions that were once performed by a family today are taken care of by a range of specialized institutions. To give you all an example over here, remember, today you have a well established education system in many parts of the developed countries. There is a well established education system that looks after the educational needs of its society's young members. Number two, we have health related facilities that are available, that are there to take care of all the health related concerns that individuals in a society have. Number three, we have law enforcing agencies that are supposed to take care of the safety and security of the members of a family. So is the case with then we have this welfare system. UK has an amazing welfare system, so does Canada. The idea over here is that the idea over here is that it's the state that is expected to take care of the welfare related concerns of individual family members. Now, summing it up, we're talking about the loss of functions. If these functions that were once performed by the family, if they have been taken over by a range of different institutions today, there are some sociological commentators who refer to this as a loss of functions that a family used to perform. Right? Now, if we have a look at this, the development of new social institutions such as education system meant that families gradually suffered a loss of functions. Parsons believed that these changes were consistent with family evolution because they left families free to focus on two essential and irreducible functions. Now, I'll speak to you in a bit. Just give me 1 minute. Let me get over this first. Now, according to Parsons, since quite a lot of functions that were once performed by the family are today being taken care of by a range of other institutions, it wouldn't be wrong if we say, I mean, Parson says that, not me. It wouldn't be wrong if we say that a family now has two basic and irreducible functions. Basic means basic, and irreducible is something that cannot be reduced any further. So, the two basic and irreducible functions that, according to Parsons, that a family is today taking care of are: number one, primary socialization; number two, stabilization of adult personalities. Now, what exactly is primary socialization and what exactly is stabilization of adult personalities over here? As we refer to primary socialization and we refer to the stabilization of adult personalities, to give you an idea about this, primary socialization, we all know what socialization is. Remember, family is an institution, it is an agency that plays the most important role when it comes to initially socializing individual members into the society. Remember, my dear, it's your family that gives you an identity, tells you who you are, what the color of your skin is, what are the do's, what are the don'ts. It's your family that teaches you how to walk, how to talk, how to eat, how to sit. It's a family that tries making you. Okay. It's your family that reminds you That was a Zoom reminder.
What
Okay,
what to eat and what not to, sir.
yeah, yeah. It is actually your family that helps you get accustomed with the norms. It's your family that gets you helps you get accustomed right at the beginning, right? Remember, we're using the word primary socialization. So primarily socialization is done through your family, right? This is what Parsons claims, right? This is the first irreducible function that, according to Parsons, your family used to perform, and it still does. The second one over here is stabilization of adult personalities. Now, as we refer to stabilization of adult personalities over here, according to Parsons, again, remember, my kids, Parsons was an American belonging to a middle class family. He was a faculty member at the Harvard University as well. We're talking about the 1960s, a very prominent American functionalist sociologist. According to Parsons, in a very self oriented, complex society, या इन अ वेरी सेल्फ ओरिएंटेड कॉम्प्लेक्स सोसाइटी, जब हर बंदा अपनी चीज़ों में बिजी है, एवरीवन इज worrying about themselves, and in a situation like this, according to Parsons, it is your spouse. He is referring to the relationship between a husband and wife. According to Parsons, it is your spouse that looks after your physical and emotional needs. It is your spouse, according to Parsons, that is playing a very important role in terms of stabilizing your adult personality. It is your spouse that is helping you stay sane in this world where everyone else is busy in their own lives, going about things, getting their own lucida. Get it?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Taking this a step further, if we speak about Ronald Fletcher, let's have a look at what Ronald Fletcher has to say. According to Ronald Fletcher, he drew these strands together by arguing that in contemporary societies, families performed two types of functions. We're talking about core functions and we're talking about peripheral functions, right? Everyone knows what a core function is, and everyone knows what the word peripheral means, right? Something that's not core. Core functions cannot be performed by either individuals working alone or by any other institutions. Or, in other words, the functions that were performed by the family and they still are, because no other institution can replace the family when it comes to playing these functions. Families are needed for both giving birth to children and bringing up children. This involves ensuring a child's physical and psychological survival and its social development into adulthood. A child's natural parents, according to Fletcher, are best suited to this process because they have a personal investment in the child's survival and development. And remember, investments aren't always money related, right? The family also provides both a physical home, that is nurture and shelter for the child, and an emotional home in terms of the child's psychological well-being. Children feel wanted and loved when they're a part of a family, right? And then we move on towards the peripheral functions of that we say that a family performs, or that a family takes care of. Talking about these peripheral functions over here, peripheral functions are things that, while performed by some families, at some times they have been largely taken over by other institutions. Remember, we had spoken about the functions that were once performed by the family are now taken care of by specialized institutions. When we spoke about institutional differentiation, that's what we're talking about, right? These include education, healthcare, and recreation. For example, when people are ill, they are often looked after by their family before or as well as using healthcare services. So over here we have an involvement by an external institution. Do we get this?
Yes, sir.
Now,
Yes, sir.
if we get this, this brings in this topic to
Sir.
the next we'd speak about. Give me a moment, and the next we'd speak about would be the neo functionalist perspective of family, and I hope this helps.